You know, as a screenwriter, you are totally obedient to the director. I've worked with some incredible directors. In fact, the Harrowing was the book, the novel, was originally a screenplay. And I had written that, and I had a top director in mind. My absolute first choice all along was Brad Anderson, who did the magnificent independent film Session 9, one of the scariest things I've ever seen, The Machinist, Next Stop Wonderland. And that we had a list of 10, but he was the one I wanted, and we got him right away. And he got the script, he made it, everything that we talked about made it so much more than I had ever expected a movie could be. It was the ideal experience. And then we lost him to another movie, which happens all the time in Hollywood. That's why things don't get made. And I was so devastated by that because I knew we would never get that kind of synergy again. Mm-hmm. And that's when I decided, no, I want the rights back. I'm going to do it as a novel instead. And then I can think about setting it up as a movie again, but this is it. I'm going to write a novel now.
So what was the process like writing a novel, and how was that different than writing screenplays?
Well, it was kind of like directing a screenplay onto the page. In this case, I had the script. You have to use a lot more words, and you have to be a lot more internal. But I had directed before, and so that's the process. I went in there, looking at the page, taking the script and going, okay, how do I put this experience like a movie into a reader's head? And so layer by layer, I would put in the atmosphere and the internal dialogue and the sound effects and the musical mood thing and the character, you know, and everything. So it really was like directing a dream that goes straight into the reader's head and creating that suspense and tension and terror.
And you had the screenplay, like you said, to start with, so that was sort of, was it working kind of as an outline?
It was the outline, yeah. It works exactly as an outline. It's the structure, and yeah, then you have to put 5 times as much material into it.
Now, did it feel like you were going out on a ledge when you said, okay, I'm tired of being a screenwriter, and there's just, the odds of having a successful project are very difficult. Mm-hmm. What was that process like when you said, okay, I'm going to try to write novels. I've got an agent. I know the business pretty well. Talk about that a little bit. Well,
at first it was easy because I was working on a film job for a major director at the time, and I was adapting a novel, and by that time I had realized I'm doing this in the wrong order. I should be writing the book first so that someone is, you know, trying to adapt my book so I was having a terrible time doing that, and I would come home in a rage, or I was home most of the time, and I would write 1 hour a night on the novel. It was sheer fury, which is a good fuel, I find, for getting things done. And once I had gotten to the end of it, I thought, oh my God, I really have a novel here and I need to get serious. And that's when I hooked up with a writing group and really started committing to the process.
And you were still living in California at the time,
Oh
correct?
yeah, absolutely.
Now, how long did it take you to write the novel itself from start to finish?
It's so hard to say because I was working really 10 hours a day on another job, but it took me about a year from start to finish, but I had breaks in between. But I had already written the screenplay, so it's hard to quantify, but I would say it was about a year.
Okay. Well, you've got a workbook here today, so let's take a look at that and talk a little bit about the process of writing and how the workbook informs some of the things that you actually write.
Yeah, I brought this in because I think it's interesting for any writers who are out there. This is what in Hollywood is called a mood book. Directors usually do this, but I picked it up really early on. I just collage people who I see as the characters, just the colors, shots that, in this case, who's going to be in it, or an image, a theme that I'm looking for, the woman as temptress, the androgyny of this, I don't know how well people can see it, but
Sure.
the masculine, feminine, and then this androgynous thing. So it really helps, I think, to find images that you can work with as a writer, because it specifies, it brings that whole sensory specific detail into your work.
Now, do you outline as well?
Yes, about 75 pages. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
your new novel, which is coming out just after New Year's 2008, The Price, that was part of a two-book deal, correct?
Right.
So talk about some of the differences between writing a novel, writing The Harrowing, which you didn't have a deal for at the time, and then The Price, knowing that you had a publisher.
Actually, writing The Harrowing was a lot easier because I didn't have any expectation from it. And I didn't have to self-promote. As you know, marketing is a huge part of the job of being a novelist. And with The Price, I was writing, first of all, it's a harder story. It's a darker one and more adult and bigger canvas. But I also was on the road most of the time doing the book tours, doing the signings for The Harrowing. I got nominated for the Stoker Award for The Harrowing, and I had to, do those. I mean, I love it, it's great, but the interviews and things like that take a lot of time. And you have to do that, especially as a debut novelist. You're just out of town all the time. So I found that a lot harder to work on it.
Well, we're coming down to a couple of minutes left in the interview. Speaking of awards, you were just notified of your nomination as we're shooting here in the studio yesterday, in fact, of being nominated for an Anthony Award, which, if you're watching the program and you don't know what that is, it's a very prestigious Mystery Writers Award given at BoucherCon, an annual mystery convention. What does being just nominated, let alone if you win the thing, what does being nominated do for a debut novelist in terms of your standing at the publisher and with reviewers?
It's huge. It's huge. I've had email all day from all kinds of reviewers and best-selling novelists, and everybody looks at those awards, and it gives you just a prestige and a glow that is just incalculably valuable. Of course, your publisher is thrilled with you, and it's really great that when I'm negotiating a new contract that this has just happened. So there's not a single downside to it. It's an amazing thing, and it's also because the Anthony is a mystery award and the Stoker is a horror award. It makes me realize that I did hit both of those audiences, and that's the line I've been trying to do with my thrillers. So it's an amazing thing.
That's awesome. Well, we've got about 30 seconds left here, so let's toss it over to you. And then the question that I have is, what advice would you give to someone who learns tomorrow that St. Martin's Press is going to publish their first 2 novels?
Oh gosh, you need to join the organizations in your genre, Sisters in Crime or International Thriller Writers, Mystery Writers of America, so that you have other writers telling you what to do. You need to join the email lists, the Yahoo lists that are out there. There are great resources, and read the books on how to promote yourself, because you're going to need all the help that you can get. And if, again, people go to my website, I have an internet resources for writers list that is a really good place to start, because it's just too big a question to answer here.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in this evening to The Artist's Craft. I am your host, Stacey Cochran, and I'd like to thank Alexandra Sokoloff for being on the show. Thank you.
Thanks.
I think that's...
flew by.